Hello, you two gorgeous bastards. How are you?
Hi, Timothy. Hey, Jason. How's it going?
Fantastic. Hello out there to the greater tribe. How are you all doing? We have the live stream going, so feel free to comment, question, all that kind of stuff. Jason will be fielding the questions and the comments. Yeah, so totally interactive process again. I think we're going to try and do it this way every time. Absolutely. So awesome.
And
Cool.
and as soon and this will be deleted, I think, off the Facebook when the YouTube is up.
Okay.
Stop confusion. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So it makes this extra special too, as well.
It's like you're hanging out with us in real life.
Yeah.
All right. Anything new and exciting over there in your part of the world, Thomas?
The weather's beautiful. It's lovely and warm and sunny, and there's a lovely, nice buzz, and it's definitely a nice atmosphere at the moment. I've been working very, very hard, which is a good thing lately, and I can't complain at all. I mean, yeah, business has been good for me in the tourist sector. So hopefully we're turning a corner or something. It's good. I saw
fantastic.
A lot less terror in people's eyes this weekend.
Good. Yeah, the smoke is clearing out here. It was really, really bad for several weeks. It's definitely affected my sinuses. Made me feel tired a lot of the time, but it seems to be clearing out. The weather's cooled down a lot. We're out of the triple digits, finally.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Can't only hang with that for so long. I'm too old for that shit now.
Yeah, it's not natural for people to live like that.
No, it's really not. Okay. Jason, how have you been?
Oh, pretty good. It's been definitely a strange week for me psychically, but I'm real interested to hear what Thomas has to say about the psychic weather, because I don't know about anyone else right now, but I've just kind of been playing the hermit a little bit and keeping to myself. I haven't been super active on Facebook here this last week, but I also noticed somebody said that they didn't get the notification for this from Facebook. So I think Facebook may have shadow banned me at the moment. But yeah, that happens. I think I'm also shadow banned on Instagram too. But yeah, things are going pretty good here. And yeah, really looking forward to kicking off episode 9 with you guys.
There's a unique psychic weather event this week, so it'll be an interesting one.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, this one comes just from the other day, August 21st. High geothermal heat beneath West Antarctica glacier responsible for its melting. Ice losses from the Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica are currently responsible for roughly 4% of the global sea level rise. This figure could increase since virtually no other ice stream in the Antarctic is changing as dramatically as the massive Thwaites Glacier. Until recently, experts attributed these changes to climate change and the fact that the glacier rests on the seafloor in many places and as such comes into contact with warm water masses. But there is also a third, and until now, one of the most difficult to constrain influencing factors. In a new study, German and British researchers have shown that there is a conspicuously large amount of heat from the Earth's interior beneath the ice, which has likely affected the sliding behavior of the ice masses for millions of years. The substantial geothermal heat flow, in turn, are due to the fact that the glacier lies in a tectonic trench, where the Earth's crust is significantly thinner than it is in neighboring East Antarctica. Unlike East Antarctica, West Antarctica is a geologically young region. In addition, it doesn't consist of a large contiguous landmass where the Earth's crust is up to 40 kilometers thick, but instead it is made up of several small and for the most part relatively thin crustal blocks that are separated from each other by a so-called trench system or rift system. In many of the trenches in this system, the Earth's crust is only 17 to 25 kilometers thick. And as a result, a large portion of the ground lies on 1 to 2 kilometers below sea level. On the other hand, the existence of the trenches has long led researchers to assume that comparatively large amounts of heat from Earth's interior rose to the surface in this region. With their new map of this geothermal heat flow in the hinterland of the West Antarctic Amundsen Sea, experts from the Alfred Wegener Institute, Center for Polar and Marine Research, and the British Antarctic Survey have now provided confirmation. Quote, our measurements show that where the Earth's crust is only 17 to 25 kilometers thick, geothermal heat flow of up to 150 milliwatts per second, 150 milliwatts per square meter can occur beneath Thwaites Glacier. in correspondences to values reported in areas of the Rhine-Garben and East African Rift Valley, end quote. That was from Dr. Ricarda Diziet. Oh, I'm totally going to butcher his last name. I don't know how to say that, but he's a geophysicist. So yeah, it goes into a little bit more of the history of the glacier. So I don't need to read that out loud, but yeah, so there's a hot spot underneath the glacier.
Well, of all the potential ecological disasters, one I'd love to see in my lifetime would be to see the ice melt from Antarctica, just to see what's under there. So I find this kind of exciting. I mean, will we find Machu Picchu and Angkor Wat and similar type places down there, you know, ancient ruins? We know about the P. Risi map, which shows Antarctica with no ice on it from, you know, the Ottoman Empire. And that was based on a much earlier map. And so, I mean, we know it's a landmass. It's not a chunk of ice like the North Pole. And we would probably finally get to see if Lovecraft was right with the Mountains of Madness, and why the Nazis were obsessed with that place, and why the CIA and the US, especially the US Navy, and we all know about, we had a few discussions on the show about their involvement in spooky stuff. And it makes a lot of sense, actually, because there was an article in the Atlantic a few years ago that said really only a small area of the Antarctica should be covered in ice, like right in the center. It doesn't seem right that all of it is completely covered, as if it's in some unnatural state at the moment that's caused it to some kind of solar or earth thing to make it go cold. So maybe colder than it should be. So perhaps now it's returning back to its natural equilibrium, where you have like an ice sheet similar to Mars. You have a very small icebound area in the very, very center, and the rest is all exposed land. So you know, it's a very exciting thing, and I know that, like, a lot of conspiracy theorists are very into the whole Antarctica conspiracy, that they're hiding something. But there are days I really do believe they probably are true, because it's just such a mystic, just such a queer place that way. The way it's divided up between all these countries. There's like strict moratoriums on visiting, and they say it's for ecology and animals and stuff like that. They don't want people damaging the unique ecology of the place. But it's obviously it's probably full of fossil fuels and everything like that, and valuable minerals. But on top of all that, it almost seems like when I look at Antarctica and when I think about Antarctica, and the Atlantic magazine, I think it was about 10 years ago, had an article on what it would look like with the ice gone, just showing the mountains, and it looked like something from Lord of the Rings. So it's almost like, is that the undying lands? Is that the you know, I often wonder, I would love to see that ice melt in my lifetime, and just to see what was under there and what the fuss was all about.
Yeah, I've always been very interested in Lake Vostok and the stories that have come out of there. And wasn't there a big like a blip sound that came out of there a couple of years back?
That was in the southern pole of inaccessibility, exactly where Cthulhu is, between Easter Island and the actual the land there. And you know, so that was really an interesting thing that happened. The southern pole of inaccessibility, if you're in that in a boat, the nearest people to you would be in the ISS space station than anyone else on Earth. So it's a really strange place. Yeah, there was a photograph also taken there. It was published and then it vanished off the face of the earth. It was taken off Google Earth, of a gigantic animal that was spotted in that area. And it was like a squid that was, the size of an oil tanker. And the picture was, and because they had something to compare it to, because there was a landmass nearby that could measure it, that they knew what the size of it was. And this was in Antarctica. This was just off the Atlantic coast, and the image was scrubbed from Google after someone found it.
That always happens to the good stuff.
Yeah, I keep thinking with this, the stuff that Ben Davidson puts out on his Suspicious Observers channel, and what you were talking about, Thomas, a couple of days ago with your video about the magnetic pole flip, and this idea that if there is like a crustal displacement, you know, there'll be parts of the planet that were once covered in ice that now are unexposed, and areas that were, you know, temperate are becoming cold again. So I wonder if Antarctica is moving up, so to speak, closer to kind of like an Australian climate or something, or was it Tasmania? Is that the island that's right south of yeah, so it's a climate similar to that. So that's what it's saying with this, is like a geothermal heating. And I know that like what it's fashionable to do the whole like climate change thing, that this is being caused by by man-made greenhouse gases and stuff. But I would imagine, with all the earth changes that we're going through right now, and this being likely something that goes along with the solar cycle that we've been talking about here for the last couple of months, that again, this is just one of those indicators, especially since, Ben over there at Suspicious Observers has this whole list of things. And I think one of those first things you see is a slowly evolving change in climates in different areas. And I think after that, he talks about volcanic activity. So we'll just have to see. I know that it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there's some volcanic activity, I want to say around Japan. I might be wrong. If you guys put it in the chat where it was, I'm sure some of you guys saw that. But there's just been a little bit of volcanic activity going on. And I would imagine we're going to start seeing more of that. And again, the other part of that is they're supposed to be passing through a debris field or something like that, that the magnetics of the earth cause little particulate matter from space to come in and stop, do kind of meteor shower type things. So I bet, all this stuff, every week we see something new in the news about meteors passing by with, near misses each time. And it's just, every single week we start seeing that, where there's like another one's bound for, this one's the size of a car, this one's the size of a something, this one's supposed to be the size of the Empire State Building. And it's just, all the time we're just seeing stuff like that. So I would imagine that this has everything to do with the magnetics. But yeah, again, it'll be really cool to see what's actually down there in Antarctica, the kind of Lovecraftian thing. And but I'm just kind of super excited to see where this goes. I feel like we're in a big flux period right now, and things are only going to get stranger and more interesting.
I often wonder why that immense amount of thermal energy that comes out of the center of the earth is kind of discounted from, global warming models. Yeah, it definitely is getting warmer. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we don't get snow or ice here anymore, as things are now. And like in Norway, they have bicycle and cross-country skiing paths, and in wintertime, they use them for cross-country skiing, and then the rest of the year they use for bicycle paths. And the last few years, there's been so little snow in Norway that they've been using them for bicycle paths all the time. So it is warming up, but I'd like to know what's causing it. And they never seem to tell us about the heat inside the earth. A big thing, lots of people now are getting geothermal energy, where they run a huge mile of cable outside their backyard, and it picks up heat out of the ground, and it brings it up to a certain temperature, and then they pump the heat. It's real cheap to heat that water up. I mean, that to me seems like a colossal amount of energy that's never really talked about. Heat energy. And and then when Timony was saying in the article about that, there's actually like a hotspot now developing there. Does the planet regulate itself the way a body does, through the interior core, the mantle?
Yeah, I think that's a very probable explanation.
Yep.
Shout out to Brad Olson too. I don't know if he's watching this, but he has done some phenomenal work. He actually went on an expedition to Antarctica a couple years ago. I know he's written some books on it. I think he said something that's like 1% of 1% of the entire population is the amount of people that have ever set foot in Antarctica. Because nobody
might as well be. When Scott and Adamson went there, it might as well have been another planet. Yeah,
that's basically what he said too. Could totally be off world and you wouldn't know it.
Well, they only knew about it officially until like the 1600s or something. Some Dutch explorers sailed too far south from Australia and said, "Oh, what's this ice?" I think it was discovered really, really late in human history.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, this one is super weird, and we thought you would like this one, Thomas. This one's from August 17th, and excuse my coughing, I'm not sick. I'm just still trying to deal with all the smoke that's been hanging out for the last couple of weeks. So this one says, from August 17th, scientists grew stem cell mini brains, then the brains sort of developed eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Mini brains grown in a lab from stem cells have spontaneously developed rudimentary eye structures, the scientists report in a fascinating new paper. on tiny human-derived brain organoids grown in dishes, two bilaterally symmetrical optic cups were seen to grow, mirroring the development of eye structures in human embryos. This incredible result will help us to better understand the process of eye differentiation and development, as well as eye diseases. Quote, our work highlights the remarkable ability of brain organoids to generate primitive sensory structures that are light sensitive and harbor cell types similar to those found in the body, said neuroscientist Jay, again, a last name I'm not even going to attempt. He's from the University of Dusseldorf in Germany. These organoids can help to study brain-eye interactions during embryo development, model congenital retinal disorders, and generate patient-specific retinal cell types for personalized drug testing and transplantation therapies. Brain organoids are not true brains, as you might be thinking of them. They are small, three-dimensional structures grown from induced pluripotent stem cells, cells harvested from adult humans and reverse engineered into stem cells that have the potential to grow into many different types of tissue. In this case, these stem cells are coaxed to grow into blobs of brain tissue without anything resembling thoughts, emotions, or consciousness. Such mini brains are used for research purposes where the actual living brains would be impossible, or at the very least, ethically tricky, testing drug responses, for example, or observing cell development under certain adverse conditions. This time, the doctor and his colleagues were seeking to observe eye development. In previous research, other scientists had used embryonic stem cells to grow optic cups, the structures that developed into almost the entire globe of the eye during embryonic development. And other research has developed optic cup-like structures from induced pluripotent stem cells. Rather than grow these structures directly, the doctor and his team wanted to see if they could be grown as an integrated part of brain organoids. This would add the benefit of seeing how the two types of tissue can grow together rather than just growing optic structures in isolation. Eye development is a complex process, and understanding it could allow underpinning the molecular basis of early retinal diseases. Thus, it is crucial to study optic vesicles that are the primordium of the eye, whose proximal end is attached to the forebrain, essential for proper eye formation. I'll show you what it looks like.
Homunculus.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what we're dealing with.
Yep.
And aren't stem cells procured from the spinal cords of aborted fetuses?
As far as I know.
Yeah, I think they are, yeah. And well, I mean, that's self-evident there. I mean, that story gave me the willies as soon as I was reading it the other day myself. The ovarian cancer is a pretty horrific thing. And have you ever seen that in the stage 4 that the tumors start turning into beings? Have you ever heard about this?
Oh, yes, I have heard about this.
Yeah,
yes.
It's one of the most disturbing. I saw a documentary years ago when I was a kid about it, and I was having nightmares about it. The ovaries tumors start growing teeth and eyeballs and faces,
hair and all kinds of stuff.
Faces. That's if the poor women say the poor women in a pre-modern age, these poor women died alone in the countryside in a cottage or something. I often wondered if some kind of monster would have germinated from that cancer and come to life, and that's where like it is kind of like monster in the wilderness. There's how these entities enter. I mean, it's a really terrifying. It's a classic horror story in itself. The idea that these entities might actually try and come into human form through tumors. Particularly tumors concerned with the gestation of life, ovaries and stuff
right.
like that, and then kill the woman and then come to life as this kind of a monster. I find that quite a disturbing, but also kind of a plausible thing, because nowadays they would just die and we'd bury the poor woman. But in the olden times, that happened in the middle of nowhere or something. What would happen? And I think when I first saw that thing, it was like, yeah, that's a homunculus, and there's no doubt about that. And these guys are only learning, like what Crowley has always been saying, scientists are only picking up bits of magic and they're calling it their own. That's what that was, and I think that's kind of like woken them up a little bit as well. I think although they tried to play it as, oh, how interesting is this? I'm sure those researchers were like, we've kind of know what we're doing here, don't we? Let's kind of put a decent spin on it. but they were creating new life forms now, soulless beings. And it's kind of, in this, the age of the NPC, it's almost like Mother Nature or the Matrix or whatever is reminding us of like the kind of world we live in now through science. But yeah, it's quite a disturbing story, and it's something that didn't settle well with me when I saw those pictures of those two black eyes looking at me.
Yeah, it reminds me of that quote from Dr. Ian Malcolm, life finds a way, but it not always should.
and it's not always the life you want.
Exactly. Yeah. We've seen that movie. We know how it ends. It's not good.
Yeah, and the thing that I keep thinking of is a few days ago, Timothy, you sent me this film or a video of the doctor who developed the needlecraft, the mRNA needlecraft, and they did the development through these, what are they called, organoids, which, again, this is working with stem cells, and the stem cells are either, Claire said that they're harvested from, what did she say, from the umbilical cord. So some of them come from the umbilical cord, but yes, some of them do come from the aborted fetuses and stuff. So it's like I've mentioned before, there's these biotech people here in the Seattle area that are kind of our 21st century necromancers of, if we want to say of the Black Brotherhood, of the, the other side of the occult, where people are doing some dark shit. You've got these necromancers over there playing with genetic material, and all of this goes into development with these new needle crafts that are coming out, not just the one for the Rona, but it's like I would imagine there's going to be just going forward. We've had many different needle crafts come across, and in the future they're going to use the same mRNA technology and other injections that people will get in the future, I would imagine. So it's just strange, though, that it's creepy that they're testing this stuff on these little homunculi, these little flesh golems that I would imagine they're living nervous systems, but they may have a certain level of awareness, but aren't necessarily aware of being aware. So that they, if it's a partially formed brain, that means there's got to be a complex nervous system in there. And at what point, are they going to start hooking these things up for the, what does Elon Musk call it? The neural net, or is that Zuckerberg? One of them talks about having a AI interface between the brain, consciousness, and social media. So I would imagine that some of this work that they're doing with the neural net, they're probably using these organoids, these little miniature organs, to do some kind of weird shit with that. Because at that point, you're talking about, we were talking about voodoo last week and sympathetic magic. It's like, what's going on there when you're harvesting cells from someone's body, what's going to happen when those cells that were harvested from someone's body get used to make a little flesh golem. You're creating a correspondence there between either, if they were harvested from an umbilical cord, that's two lives you're fucking with right there, the life of the mother and the life of the child who that umbilical cord was attached to. So there's going to be some kind of sympathetic resonance there between the little flesh golem, this little mini brain or whatever it is that they make, and those two individuals that shared that umbilical cord at one point. Because I would imagine their DNA, you could probably do a DNA test on the little homunculus and see that, oh yeah, that originated from this, these two people. And that's why we don't allow people to have clippings of our hair or clippings of our fingernails and stuff, because there's a crazy correspondence there that you create when you do one thing to the golem, and something like that is going to have some kind of sympathetic resonance with the host that DNA belongs to. So it's just they're playing with the dark arts in a way that, I would imagine this is similar to what happened in the Atlantean times or the falls of other civilizations, where the magic just gets out of control and put into the hands of people that are not initiated. They're not adepts, they're not masters. They're people who have gotten a little taste of something. And like in Jurassic Park, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So that's what I've got to say about all these necromancers who are playing around with biomechanics here in the Seattle area.
There definitely is something to the concept of the body with no personality or spirit or psyche, and one that has. It's definitely true, because I grew up surrounded by a lot of babies. I was the oldest of my siblings, so I saw all my brothers and my sister all grow up after me, and I was involved in that's how it was back then in Ireland. You were involved in the childcare, helping your mother and stuff like that. I used to do mappies. And so I know my aunts used to were all in the same age and they were all having babies. And I was always encountering babies, right? From an early age. And there were some babies you could actually see when the minute they were, I'm sure, Tim, you've noticed this too as a mother, that some babies, when they were born, they were very conscious and looking around. Some babies, it happened after a week or two. There was something changed, a switch would come on. Some babies a little later, like I can remember my cousin David, when he was born, that like they were a bit worried about him. He was kind of like very, very quiet. And then about 6 months later, he switched on like a switch and you couldn't stop him. It was almost like, I don't know whether it develops at different rates in different babies or if the personality arrives at a certain point earlier on, but there's definitely something true to it. And I've spoken to midwives and, women who've worked in hospitals delivering babies, and they say, yeah, you can actually see the point where the little person arrives. And sometimes they're born, but they're definitely something good. Yeah.
I was actually telling a story to somebody yesterday about the day that Escher was born. I had him at home with a midwife, and I had a family member come over later on that day, and they were holding him. And I can't remember if I got up and walked across the room or if my son's dad got up and walked across the room. But Escher, as a 8-hour-old baby, he tracked him with his eyes. And my family member who was holding him was blown away, had lots of their own children, all of them adults, but said they had never seen a baby that young track somebody. Like, he was conscious. He knew where he was.
His ears are ringing.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah. And that was really interesting for me because I had been around kids and stuff, but definitely I only have one son, but that was interesting to see or hear from somebody else who had been through a lot of births and had newborns that they had never seen. I mean, he was conscious from the second he arrived.
Yeah. And then some of them take a couple of months.
Yeah.
And they catch up. But it's I've seen it. I've seen the point where they actually, the little fellow or the little girl inside them arrives. It's the strangest thing. It's quite magical, actually.
It is. Wonder if it has to do with how the nervous system in the body is set up too. If they come in real strong and the nervous system is ready to go, or, if the nervous system needs a little priming first before it can fully express that out.
Well, I have a theory. I noticed when it happened, they started dreaming and then they came along. It was almost like they dreamed themselves into existence because the baby would start doing this and then the little kind of personality would arrive. So I always found it quite magical how the baby would kind of dream themselves into existence.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm going to remember that.
Folks, please keep the comments and the video civil. If there's any bullshit going on, you're blocked. So again, just keep it civil in there, please.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. This one's kind of funny. We'll make sure we link the video so you guys can all see it. This one comes from August 17th. Let's see. Boston Dynamics Atlas robots work a parkour course like it's nothing. Boston Dynamics Atlas robot has advanced its parkour skills since we first watched it navigate obstacles like a boss. In a new video from the company, the bipedal robots can be seen jumping up the levels of a tiered platform, running across and over a balance beam, and generally making most humans look like clods in comparison. The Atlas robot, which also counts backflips and handstands among its talents, has demonstrated impressive balance while parkouring before. The difference here is the robot can now adapt behaviors based on what it sees. That means engineers don't have to pre-program jumping motions for all the platforms and gaps the robot might encounter. It's become a more independent athlete. Atlas, initially designed for search and rescue tasks, was unveiled to the public in 2013. The robot stands about 5 feet tall and weighs 190 pounds. It's battery powered and hydraulically actuated with 28 degrees of freedom. Boston Dynamics has identified parkour as a perfect test activity for Atlas as the company works to make high-powered humanoid robots more dexterous. The training discipline engages the whole body and requires Atlas to maintain its balance in different situations and seamlessly switch between behaviors. Quote, "We're exploring how to push it to its limits, sometimes operating at those limits. we learn a lot from that in terms of how to build robots that can survive falling on their face and getting back up and doing it again. And then they linked some videos of the robot demonstrating these things. Yeah, go ahead. I know you have something to say about that.
Yeah, I've seen these videos before with the not doing the parkour and stuff, but it's like it's only a matter of time until they start arming these things, and you know they're gonna be going around, you know, replacing the police, replacing military service members and stuff. It always fucked with me when they started introducing unmanned aerial vehicles and all the UAVs, all the drones that go over and do the attacks that the CIA does. Stuff like that. It's just we're inching closer and closer into this strangely automated world where, like we talked about last week, with no one needing a real boyfriend or girlfriend anymore, and just having a digital avatar here on your computer or your phone. And it's like we're inching towards that too with Boston Dynamics and some of these other companies that we only see as the public. Some of the tests and prototypes that they've made, but we've got to assume that they've got more technology than the public is allowed to be seen here. So, it'll be cool for doing things like, I know they've got the robots that have gone into Chernobyl and places that have a tremendous amount of radioactivity. It's great for bomb squads and stuff, for one of these those little dog looking things to go up and be able to test out an explosive to make sure that you're not sending a human in there. But it's like there's a fine line between using that for good purposes and then using it for something that can get out of control. And if you send a military of these over, you send a squad of these over into Afghanistan or wherever, it's just I think we're messing with the Geneva Convention again with these kind of things. So I'm just not a fan of it. And I think again, like with the biotech stuff, it's like humanity is flirting with some really dangerous things here. But Thomas, as you said, it's like nature has its way of correcting, and perhaps if there's a big CME or something, all these little robots are just going to fall over, because I imagine the slightest amount of an EMP, unless they're shielded for EMPs, it's just going to destroy their fry their circuits.
Could you imagine the psychic energy of working inside a place like Boston Dynamics? What kind of geeks, horrible, evil geeks would work in there, and who in the right mind would want to work around those things? If they're disturbing looking, when you see it looks like what it is, soulless life, waiting for a djinn to jump into it or something and take it over. And it's only a matter before they put it like an assault rifle on its back and a video camera. Well, they've already got that, I'm sure. But it's this is the world that's quite frightening, that I do think about sometimes, that they want, that the globalists are after. And again, I just I admire hackers, because we'll need them in the future to fight these battles against these things. Personally, I find the whole concept repugnant. I think any police office, not police, but any police department, government, city council that even would hire one of these things to patrol litter in the park, I think there's something not right with this. If you look at that thing moving and you don't feel a sense of revulsion and dread, then you're probably a psychopath. And I reckon that's the kind of people that, like, geek psychopaths are involved in building these things in like Boston Dynamics. And yes, it's impressive. You cannot deny the remarkable engineering and how all the gears and everything work, and the gyroscopic controls of the legs and the limb movements. It's spectacularly impressive. And the whole thing like that, and how it learns how to walk open doors and walk up steps and all this kind of thing. But it's not, well, how does that benefit humanity? Okay, you could say, well, if we had an earthquake zone, they could tunnel into buildings and pull people out, but they never do that. If there was people in a burning building, they could run in and get them out. They'll never use them for that. They'll just put a gun on a camera on the thing's back, and they'll be walking around prodding us, and it'll be sold an acute thing first. You'll mark my words, one of them will appear at a major sports tournament, either the Super Bowl or the World Cup, and it'll play a game. It'll play with the footballers on the pitch. It'll run and catch a ball and score a goal or a touchdown, and everyone will be laughing and saying it's amazing. And then a week later, it's in your neighborhood with a machine gun on its back.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if you guys have seen those. I think they're either commercials or ads on YouTube where there's like a little toy robot that you can get for your kid, and it says good night, and it's got like these big cutesy eyes and stuff. And it's something like, oh, make it part of your family. It's like, fuck no, this is like the same kind of people that have these weird relationships with their phones where they give them names, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, no. A robot should not have any kind of equivalent of the same rights in your house that a dog or a cat, or a child would have. And we're just inching closer to, I think, with the AI thing also, at what point are they going to give AI and bots the equivalent of human rights? Because then, at some point it'll be like there's going to be, it'll be a crime, it'll be a misdemeanor or a felony to tamper with a robot's operating system. So it'll make it more difficult for the hackers and the people on our side to do something. They just have to be more covert about it. But I just think didn't they already somebody granted citizenship to that? I think it was called Sophia, the one that's like a walking blow up doll. That thing that has the fake smile, and it basically has like the entire internet there in its consciousness. But somebody, it was either, might have been China, it might have been the CCP that gave it citizenship. But at that point, it's like, no, again, we're talking about life here. No, that's not life. Just because something is aware doesn't mean that it's life. When something's aware of being aware. Yeah. So I don't like this one bit.
And this is the human rights thing is important, because this was my main beef with the needle crafting. It's like, at what point do you stop being human and start being AstraZeneca or Pfizer, and that they own that part of you? Or does human rights apply to you if like 95% of you is only human? And we're not even having these debates. So you go online, you can find nothing where they have these. They have things about bioethics, and you go on and you can find nothing in bioethics about these kind of debates. They'll be debating about like how can we use fetuses in animal testing and all this kind of thing, but they never have that. And so we got to be, I mean, if you were to punish someone in the future, we have a criminal system, like someone is caught shopping and the shoplifting, and the punishment is, well, we're giving 25%, we're giving 10% of your genes to the state. So they inject you with a needle craft that changes 10% of your genes to ownership of the state. So therefore, you're basically no longer a human. Therefore, you can be used in anything from, medical experiments to being sent off to war against your will, or to not having any, I think if you're a captured prisoner of war, and they'd say, oh, you're 25% owned by the state, you don't have any human rights. Geneva Convention. These are things that should be like major discussion points today, but of course they're not, because if they were even brought up, the average person would go, oh, so this is where we're going, and they can't let them know that.
You said something interesting. I know you meant if you're caught shoplifting, but you said if you're caught shopping, and I'm like, nah, you're probably right, man. Like I think it's getting to points like that now where certain, I don't know if it's entire countries, but I want to say Max Egan was saying in Australia, you've got to have your papers, please, to be able to go into the grocery store. And I want to say that LA or LA County, somewhere in Southern California, is inching towards that too, where in order to go into the grocery stores, you got to have your needlecraft paperwork with you. And so, yeah, maybe they will be there to, rather than a bit coming from, from the Nazis or something, you're going to have a robot there that's going to be able to scan your papers before you can go into the grocery store. And if you're caught shopping without having been needle crafted, yeah, who knows what they'll do. And yeah, at that point, how much, again, if the definition of human changes to where part of the company that starts with a P or the company that starts with an M, you have an X amount percentage of that DNA within your body makes you a human. So what about the rest of us who don't have the DNA from the P or the M company within our system? Does that make us a different class of human at that point? I kind of see them going in that direction too, if by changing the definition of what it means to be human or what it means to be a life. So it's just, again,
they can have a reward system then, like if you do as you're told, we'll give you back more human, and then you get more benefits.
Right.
It's fucking unbelievable. If this is why they hide these conversations and never have them. They don't want anyone, the great unwashed, finding any of this stuff out.
Yeah, and Ben said it's an insult that they call it Sophia. Doesn't the word philosophy come from Sophia, wisdom, aka the love of wisdom? A robot cannot think about thinking. Exactly, Ben. Yeah, that's some good stuff right there. I know it's just such a slap in our face to call that piece of junk, to name it Sophia. It's just like they, you know, like you say all the time, Thomas, they're burlesquing us. You know, it's just yeah, the whole thing is just but it's just this big picture that some of us are talking about, all these points that are all over the place. We do look like that conspiracy theory meme, you know, with all the things and the lines. It's like, but no, there is kind of a puzzle that we've got. Yeah, but something, you know, we can piece it together, and we're not necessarily going to have the whole picture right. But you know, we're formulating something here. But you know, everything we talk about on the show, I feel like we're giving people a little bit of an insight into, you know, this is a little bit of a heads up. This is the direction that things are going in, and our personal opinions of things. You know, I imagine most of you share these same opinions too, and we're all kind of figuring this out together and looking out for each other.
Yeah, and because we are dealing with dark craft workers, remember you're under their rules of engagement. You're always given a choice, you know. So don't accept the devil's shilling and then turn around, spend it, and then turn around and say later, oh, they got me by surprise. Just like with the needlecraft, where they've put, it's very accessible, all the stuff out there regarding all the side effects and deaths. And if you still choose it, that's why they do it. They put that out there because they're saying it was of your own free will. The devil knocked on the door and you opened it. You know.
There was a headline that came out today. So as of today, I can't remember which one it was, but it got the FDA approval. And the headline was so arrogant, and it was the way that it was worded. It was so obvious. If you've ever had somebody tell you exactly what it is that you wanted to hear so that they could get something from you, manipulate you, control you, or something. Yeah. And the way that it read, I mean, it was pretty simple, but I don't have it in front of me right here, but it basically said something like, you know, whichever one it was, whichever brand, was approved today by the FDA. And it had the most, in the amount of time that it was approved has never happened before. And they've never had more evidence for the safety of a drug before. And it was just the way that it was worded was like, well, here you go. Now you can say that it's FDA approved. There's so much evidence we couldn't not approve it, even though it totally goes against the whole process of which the FDA I think is trash anyways. But just the way that it was worded, it was so obvious. And that was actually one comment section that I've ever seen on the internet that didn't make me want to throw up. Everybody in there was like, wow, that is complete fucking bullshit. If you can't see right through that, I don't know what to tell you. And like what you were saying with you have the choice.
You have the choice. And even if you don't make a choice, you still made a choice. Always remember that.
Thank you, Neil Peart. Brilliant lyrics. All right, Thomas, are you ready for the psychic weather? I know I am.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Okay, welcome to this week's psychic weather. I didn't hear the themes tune then, so I assume it's okay. We'll put it on later. Some people didn't like it, so that means we're going to put it on extra loud this week. This week's psychic weather is a unique event. It's unique since we've been doing these reports, and it's happened to me in my life, and I'm sure it's happened to you in your life. For some reason, people that have been out of my life have all started coming back. This is a very interesting thing. In the last 2 weeks, people now that not necessarily bad or good, or some are good, most of them have had good relationship with them, but they just drifted out of my life. And they suddenly out of the blue are contacting me, emailing me, PMing me. And on top of people that may have been gone for years now. And they're just coming back and connecting with me again and talking with me again. And then there's a few idiots who've come back who try to like grab a bit of flyby energy. So I don't know what this means. If this is if there's an astrological thing to it, this is one probably for the astrologers, but it's an interesting one, all right. That the psychic weather this week is they return. They have returned. Why, I don't know, but it's very real and it's very interesting. And it doesn't come with a sense of malice or anything like that. In fact, it comes with kind of a calming sense, if anything. As if reality is adjusting itself back to where it used to be a while ago. There's almost like there was a glitch, and you know, there's it's corrected itself, you know, and it's you know, the way when a model train is going around the track, a wheel could come off and then it would correct itself and come back on the track. It's almost like there's been a correction, and these people are sort of like a symbol of that. So there's been an adjustment, like adjustment card in the top deck, where things have released themselves back to a sense of equilibrium. And other than that, I haven't sensed anything negative about it, but I haven't sensed anything wonderfully positive either. It's just like, okay, the clock is now no longer 5 minutes slow. It's telling the right time again, and I think that's it's quite remarkable. It's actually quite incredible, really. There's one individual I haven't seen since I heard from a teenager, and they'd lived away for years and years and contacted me. And so, and then ones that I hadn't seen for a few years, and ones that I hadn't seen for a long time, and they're just saying, "How's it going? What's up? How are you doing?" And just being sort of like very friendly and on board. And so there's a cycle that's correcting itself here. And so it's a good time. I've been helping organize people with these coffee events to sort of like recapture humanity, and it seems to be taking off really hugely around the place. And that's almost like a sign of it as well. So whether it's something that's only affecting me, and me organizing these coffee events has kind of created this as a kind of a magic thing, I don't know. I'm just saying I affected personally something in my own life. But it's interesting. It's like it's interesting. I'd use the symbol of the Triskel for this, because when you look at a spiral is, if you look at a spiral in three-dimensional space, right, it goes like down into itself and then comes back out the other side. I think we're coming back out the other side of something. Hence the returning of people. But that's the psychic weather this week. They are returning, and that's me, Thomas.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The week in psychic weather.
That was brilliant, Thomas. Thank you. I really like how you tied that in right before you said, you mentioned your coffee meetups and your groups. I thought about it right before you said that. And I really wanted to remind people to build something like that around themselves and their communities where they are. But the magical tie of what you were saying of, you know, it's like a magnet, right? It's bringing things back around, putting people back into real life relationships, friendships, things like that. And I think if anything, that's what's going to get us through whatever is here, whatever more might be coming.
When people ask me, like, how do you do magic? Give us an example of magic. Well, the coffee meetup things it's like just my profile on the internet was a thing that allowed me to throw this idea out there. And suddenly people all over the world are now meeting up in certain places at certain times. That's a reality that didn't exist. That's something that didn't exist in the material world before now. And it's now manifested into this world. And that's a simple demonstration of magic. It's just that you have the will, you have the intent, and you have the idea to bring it together. And then you tie it all in with logos, which was the triple spiral, which became the kind of the stamp for it. But that's an example of magic. And now we have people who are connecting that were kind of maybe feeling a bit lost and a bit, you know, a bit out of the loop because of all the madness of the last year and a half. But that's a very simple demonstration of magic. Now, because I had a big, huge network, I was able to do it. But you'll find that you've done things like that in your own life, in your own neighborhood or your own friendship circle, where you restored things. So there was an element of correction. That's why I wanted to use the spiral somehow in this process. So it was a deliberate magical operation, and it is working, but it's done for the most unprofane reasons. It's done out of love, and so it's a purely white magic thing. But that's important. That's an example of how it's done. But I think you always have, when these things happen, you always have the sort of side effects of it. And the side effects of this is that the spiral is now spiraling people that were out of my life back into it. So it's a very, very interesting process, guys. And this is why we do it.
That is exactly why we do it.
And this is real interesting too, Thomas, you say this, because it was right about the same time frame when we started doing the Week in Strange back at the beginning of June, end of May. I was having people from my life from about the 2006 to 2008 timeframe suddenly start showing back up and talking to me and messaging me out of nowhere. And both my mom and I, Mom, if you're watching right now, you can attest to this too, that both her and I at that same time, around the end of May, beginning of June, it was just like some people were beginning to fade out as others were cross-fading in. And we both took note of this right about then. And yeah, like you said, you know, they're coming back. And I always like that Latin word, redivivus, you know, the return, whether you're talking about reincarnation or the return of a tribe or the return of a time. And I feel not a time as in like time travel, but the flavor of time or the quality of a time, where we talk about like the yugas, the ages, you know, the aeons, Crowley's aeons with Isis, Osiris, and Horus. And it is almost like there's an age that we're shifting into, or a time, a new flavor of time that's being, you know, moving in. And those of us who work together in life are finding each other. And then the people who are no longer in harmony or who are disharmonious with the new frequency that you're existing in, where there's not a friendly interpolation between your wavelength and their wavelength. It's just there's a separation that occurs. And
well, it's like it's using the electronics analogy again, the sine waves, it's phase locking.
Yeah.
You know, where you have the two sine waves are off and then you phase lock them on the oscilloscope. That's what it is. And that's how you create change in the material world, is when you phase lock your will with the reality around you, and then you can actually.
What is phase locking? I don't know what that is.
You know, in electronics, everything is a cycle, right? And an amplitude, a wave, right? Say a wave, right?
Right.
If you have two waves, when you phase lock them, the peaks and the valleys match together at the same time.
Oh, okay.
You don't have them out that way. Like an interesting, that's actually like in music on a 12-string guitar. If you have the two strings tuned perfectly, they're phase locked on the oscilloscope. But what a lot of 12-string guitar players do is they slightly detune to create a more interesting sound between the two strings. So phase locking that's what two frequencies are matching perfectly.
Gotcha. Okay, that's a really cool analogy.
Yeah, it's like, well, people in love, the heartbeats, and babies and mammies, the heartbeats beat
right.
the patient.
Yeah.
Or sync. Yeah.
Interesting. I like that. Okay, I'm going to move on. This one comes from August 16th, and we'll be able to tie it back into something we talked about earlier. It says, huge earth fissures crack the ground of Cochise County, Arizona. Many roads are closed. As shown in the pictures, multiple fissures opened under road, but the pavement is still there and there is no soil underneath. Roads are closed at Kansas Settlement and impassable starting at milepost 1, with closure going to South Robinson Road. The same situation is on, they're naming all of the roads and the highways that it's affected in this county. Hold on, the article disappeared. Hang on one sec. Okay, residents in the closure area are aware of road conditions and have alternate means of getting out. Oh, weird. It locked me out of the article. Sorry about this, guys. Hang on.
What state did this happen in?
This is in Arizona. I don't know what to do. Hang on.
Well, we got the gist of it. So roads are breaking up in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, and the pictures are phenomenal, and it is strange that there's these huge fissures, but like they said, there's no soil underneath it.
In a state not known for seismic activity, I don't remember ever hearing about earthquakes in that part of the world. So that makes it even more strange. Basically, the soil is being torn asunder underneath the roads.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It just, I'm sorry about this one. I don't know what happened here, but yeah. So we'll make sure that you guys can all see the the pictures and everything, but how, did you find it? Yeah, this is the same one I got. It's the article disappeared. It's just pictures. But how we were talking about with hotspots and the earth self-regulating, maybe this is a certain way for the earth to kind of sweat almost, release some heat, release some pressure. And it opens up these fissures to release some of that energy that's being built up. They're phenomenal looking. And it's strange that it didn't break the pavement. It goes right underneath it. It's
maybe
really weird.
Daisy could throw a few photographs up, or I'll find them and put them in the thumbnail or something. But that does sound interesting. I have no theories as to why that's happening. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, going along with these earth changes thing again, if there is crustal displacement, we're going along with that theory again, I would imagine there would be there could be some big ass gaping fissures that open up and create new canyons and something like Niagara Falls type looking thing. But I would imagine sometimes too, there's just a little bit of tearing. Like if you're talking about, there's the core, the inside of an orange, and if you somehow separate the skin of the orange and move it around, there'll just be these little tiny tears in there. So I think in the very first week in Strange we did, there was one of these down in Mexico, and there has been all this sinkhole activity too. And I think what happens with the sinkhole is when the soil underneath liquefies and just caves in right there. So I would imagine again with all this earth changes stuff to be kind of one of the biggest themes we have on the show here, that there's a lot of these manifestations that go along with some kind of bigger picture of something happening to the earth. And we're just, again, piecing all the things together. But Thomas, I really liked that video that you put out the other day about, when that happens, there's going to be a big torrential or a big deluge kind of flood that occurs, and just being able to grab onto something and float with it. And that's kind of like where we are, on a psychic level too. It's like, if the world is going to shit around us and we're all flowing down the river, we're all kind of grabbing onto each other and holding on to something to keep you from drowning.
That's we have photographs of these roads going back years. We know those highways have been there since probably the 1930s. And if there's no other photographs or reports of them being like that, then we know for sure, absolutely, that this is a known phenomenon. So there's definitely something going on. That's definitely something going on. And like if the county engineers found survey photographs from the 1940s, oh no, it happened in the 40s. And you could say, well, maybe there's a kind of a secular thing with the soil there. But if they don't have pictures of it before, there's something going on. Has to be.
Right. Okay. Sorry about the article on that one, but we'll get the pictures and you guys can see the pictures. And there was a short video that goes along with it too, so you can watch that later. This one I found was very interesting. And this one's from August 7th of this year. Titans under the earth, evidence for the tall ones and the mounds of Pennsylvania. During the early woodland period from about 1000 to 200 BC, the Edna people constructed extensive burial mounds and earthworks throughout the Ohio Valley in Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Most of the skeletal remains found in these mounds by earthly antiquarians and 20th century archaeologists, were of powerfully built individuals reaching between 6.5 and 8 feet in height. It is the record of these remains which has given rise to the subject of the ancient giants of the Ohio Valley. Destruction of evidence. While doing research for a book on this subject over the last several years, the authors were struck by how little of the archaeology of some regions is freely accessible and available to the public. One of those areas is in the state of Pennsylvania, where the Carnegie Museum destroyed countless burial mounds without filing comprehensive reports in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Many of the mounds wrecked by the Carnegie are only known to the public from old press reports, such as the following published in The Sun on December 8th, 1893. This mound was originally about 100 feet long and more than 12 feet high, has been somewhat worn down by time. It is on the J.R. Sechrist farm in South Huntington Township. The most interesting feature in the recent excavation was the mummified torso of the human body. Portions of the bones dug up and the bones in the legs, Professor Peterson declares, are those of a person between 8 and 9 feet in height. Large skeletal remains. In order to add some clarity to the subjects of the mound builders and large skeletal remains from Pennsylvania, the authors reviewed a considerable amount of archaeological literature from the state and incorporated the information into several chapters of Ages of the Giants, a cultural history of the tall ones in prehistoric America. Perhaps the most famous instance of press reports describing a large skeleton from a Pennsylvania mound is a case from Union Township in Washington County, Pennsylvania. In 1932, archaeologist George Fisher excavated the mound after he was informed that amateurs were engaging in heavy looting at the site. The situation attracted hundreds of spectators, and Fisher's work became a subject of daily discussion by the local media. One discovery in particular was regularly reported at the time. One of the most interesting reports that will go into the archives is that on the body of a giant, 7 feet 5 inches tall. This Titan was found on the 5th level of the clay mound where the bodies were sandwiched between 11 layers of sandstone. The majority of the adults measured between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet 3 inches in stature. One of the skeletons of these mighty men is 7 feet 5 inches in length, and even the remains of the women and children show them to have been of tremendous stature. Heavy primitive faces must have topped their mammoth bodies, Fisher says, for all of the skulls are heavily boned with massive jaws and strong teeth that could have ripped meat into shreds. The mystery of the mounds. Over the last decade, these types of press reports have caused several researchers to seek out more information on the mounds excavated by Fisher, but until now it has remained largely a mystery. The authors found that the site is known in the archaeological literature as the Pollock's Hill Stone Mound. There is some debate over the age and cultural affiliations of the mound. Archaeologists and Edna expert Don W. Drago considered the Pollock's Hill cairn to belong to the Edna Stone Mound sub-tradition in more modern times. Archaeologists have reevaluated some of the mounds that Drago included in this cultural taxon and have suggested that they could actually date to the late woodland times, several hundred years after the age of Edna. So we got.
Well, here we go again. North America is far more interesting historically than we've been told. Once again, megalithic America, it's real, ancient. I mean, the giants thing, that ties in with several Native American, First Nation stories of a race of tall giants who had fair skin and beards, who lived in the North Americas at the same time as the earliest First Nations peoples were there. And that's common throughout many Native American mythologies and histories. There was a very interesting document found in the Vatican archives left by Spanish explorers who were down in the very, very early visits to North America. They went up a river around the Charleston area of Carolinas, where it is now, and encountered what they said was a tribe of fair-skinned people who farmed like Europeans and had beards, and they kept cattle and pigs and grew crops like Europeans, and they spoke a language that they identified as either being Welsh or Irish, and they called them the Duhare. And then they vanished apparently, and that was a sworn document given to a bishop in Seville or somewhere like that he encountered Europeans living there, or European-like people. And then we have this, and the Ohio Valley definitely seems to be a very special place with all the paranormal stuff that goes on, the history down there. Ohio in general, it seems to be a kind of a hotspot for interesting American stuff like New England. The history of the North America is ridiculous, like the way they say like Columbus was the first. I mean, they even it took years for them to accept that the Vikings were even there. There's a documentary on YouTube that shows an interview between the Canadian team that found the longhouse, the Viking longhouse in Vinland, and they're showing photographs and evidence, and the British archaeologists are going, this is absolutely preposterous. This is just wild speculation. This is probably Native American, blah, 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 Indians, they call it at the time. And these guys are proven to be right. I was in Bucksport, Maine a few years ago, and they found that the red paint people were there. Now, the red paint people were found at Stonehenge, they're found in Ireland, all over Europe. These are Neolithic people that painted the skulls, the bones of their ancestors red. And they have been found in Bucksport, Maine. and that was the main reason I went. It's an interesting Fortean place as well. That's interesting, isn't it? They're all the Ohio Valley is very Fortean, very ancient megalithic-y. New England, very Fortean, very ancient megalithic-y, and so on. But I'm fascinated by this stuff. The older I grow, the more I'm fascinated by the American BC thing. I really think there's an enormous thing there that needs to be opened up.
I used to live in Kentucky for a while, and while I was there, I met a lot of people who were from places like West Virginia, and there was a legend or a myth that there was a race of blue people that lived in the mountains in West Virginia. I'll have to see if I can find any information on it, because it's a very oral tradition, right? Like things get passed down from those families. So I have to see if I can actually find anything written on it. But I just remember being told those stories from people that I met there, that there at one time was a race of blue people that lived in the mountains of West Virginia.
That was like the Picts in Scotland, the way they used to use wool to decorate themselves in blue. You wonder if it was something like that. Oh, there's lots of it. There's just so much. And it's, we had Manny Grossman on the symposium a while ago, and he's side researches the megaliths around New York State and New Jersey and stuff. This is a vast untapped resource of discovery, and unfortunately you have the TV saying they're ancient aliens, saying that they were built by spacemen and all this nonsense. And although they have to say they got some great footage on that show of the American megaliths, and they had New Newman from Megalithomania on there trying to actually steer it back the right way. But so I'm just fascinated by this and the giants thing too. Again, more proof that there was, everywhere there are stories of giant people that were much bigger than modern Homo sapiens, and we're finding bodies everywhere. What you said, one of them was over 7 foot tall. That's colossal for those days.
Yeah, and the thing that I keep going back to too is when we had Heather L. Arnold on too, and when she was talking about the ABC Islands over there, and you were just talking about it too with what was the place called that you went to, Malta? Is that Malta, where the giants were? Was Malta? Yeah, it's just there's always these account of these giant human beings, and that perhaps as maybe the last time the poles flipped or something like that occurred, the gravity could have changed too. And DNA just gets in there, and just like is that epigenetics, when your environment can change something, or an ancestral memory can come in and switch on your genes to if humans need to become a little bit shorter in stature, the DNA I would imagine could do that within a few generations, and people would start being born shorter. Or maybe at one point there were just like hobbits, men, elves, and different types of races of man around, the way that there was in the Tolkien mythology, that perhaps that's more or even in the with the ring cycle and everything within Wagner, you there's talk of giants, and there's Fafnir and Fasolt, the two brothers who were giants, and I would imagine there'd be a race of giants that the two of them came from. And it's just everywhere. I think here in the U.S. too, there was on near Avalon on Santa Catalina Island off of the coast of San Diego. I think they discovered giant remains in one of the caves there, and there's a big cave system there throughout the entire Channel Islands. And I'm pretty sure in the last ice age cycle, there's the channel there, and then there's the Channel Islands, and all that was California coastline. So when that was Lemuria or whatever we want to call it, when it's the last continent that had people inhabited on it, that the Santa Catalina Islands, all 3 or 4 of them, were connected to the mainland. And then up here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm pretty sure this is all glacier pack. And that's why some of the megaliths here are really pretty torn up, or just, washed somewhere down the Columbia River Valley, because the way that the most of the soil here in the Pacific Northwest is what I think they call it glacier toe, where you'll find all kinds of weird things here just because the glaciers ripped across and moved everything that was at one point. So you'll find strange artifacts that were from up north, wash up down in the Portland area, down into Oregon, Northern California. So
I think this whole research field of megaliths and giants, and pre the First Nation peoples, are really going to blow up in America. in research fields in the next few years. I think it's going to be a massive thing as new generations going to come along and start looking into this stuff. I think we're going to have some phenomenal discoveries in places like the Ohio Valley and New England. And it's something, I mean, if I still lived in the US, I'd be on top of that nonstop. I think this is the next big thing, is megalithic America, ancient America, mysterious, forgotten, lost America and Canada, or North America in general. It's just,
Yeah.
it's fantastic stuff. And I love stories like this. I'm always happy when a new one comes out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all that stuff as well. Definitely some good news for us over here in North America. All right, you guys. Is there anything in the comment section? Any questions that have popped up?
Can I just add at 14 stories? There's been lots of UFO activity in Ireland this week. What that's about, I don't know. But a few people have been telling me they've seen strange lights. Now, this hasn't been making a lot of news, except for one down in Cork City. But I think there's some footage there, but I think they were Chinese lanterns. But otherwise, a lot of people have been reporting strange lights to me in the last few weeks, all over the country, just sending me messages. So there's definitely, if you live in Ireland, or maybe it's happening in the UK as well, if you live in this part of the world and you've noticed this UFO activity, let me know, because there definitely seems to be something up.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll keep our eyes open for that. Thomas, thank you so much. I know you've been very busy. Appreciate your time, and we show up every week and do this, and it's great for us. I hope the tribe is enjoying it as well. We always love it when you send us things and shout us out and say hi, and yeah, never be a stranger.
And share the video when it's on YouTube, please.
Yes, please. All right, you guys. Well, thank you once again. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very, Timothy. Thank you, Jason, and I will see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.